On a serene Sunday morning, the gentle autumn sun warmed the cobblestones of Beacon Hill. Inside the Mitchells' traditional brownstone, the monthly family brunch was underway. The dining room, furnished with heirlooms, glowed softly under the generations-old chandelier. By the window, the family's Boston fern, nurtured for over a century and a half, unfurled its deep green fronds, a living piece of the house's own history. "Kate, did you make this quiche yourself?" Patricia Mitchell asked, her silver fork poised, a tweed-clad emblem of Boston society. Her smile was a polished blade. Sarah was so accomplished with French cuisine. Her coq au vin was legendary at the church fundraisers. Catherine, Kate, flinched internally but held her composure, her navy cashmere dress a testament to the confidence forged in the world of investment banking. "I used a recipe from Julia Child," she replied smoothly. "I believe she once lived here in Beacon Hill, too." Across the table, her husband Robert cleared his throat, his fingers running through his graying hair. For 3 years, these elegant brunches had been a silent battleground. "Kate," a bright voice cut through the tension. Her sister-in-law, Emily, smiled from her seat. "Would you help me with the wedding plans? We're thinking the cathedral for the ceremony, then the Four Seasons for the reception." As a brilliant pediatrician, Emily had always been Kate's warmest ally in the family. "Of course, anything," Kate said. At that, Patricia set down her cherished Wedgwood teacup. "But, dear, our society traditions can be so complex. Even the addressing of invitations has its own intricate rules." The delicate china trembled slightly. Kate's hands were shaking. Robert looked at his wife but said nothing, his silence thickening the air. "Mother," Emily said, her tone quiet but firm, "Kate is my sister-in-law. She is family. Her taste is impeccable. Everyone said so after her speech at the charity gala." Patricia's smile was gracious. Naturally, her voice was warm, but her eyes were winter. "It is simply that Mitchell traditions must be upheld. Emily's wedding will be the event of the season." The room was bathed in warm light. The silver gleamed. The floral arrangement was flawless, yet invisible fissures were spreading through the elegant facade. Kate sipped her tea and straightened her spine. A scholarship student from a middle-class background, she had built her career on merit and grit. These brunches often felt like an exquisite performance, and standing before the fireplace where a portrait of Sarah hung, she sometimes felt she would only ever be an understudy. "Speaking of which," Patricia said, as if the thought had just occurred to her, "the St. Paul's Charity Committee meets next Wednesday. You should join us, Kate, if your work schedule permits." Of course, the condescension was a finely honed art. Still, Kate smiled. "Thank you, Patricia. I'd be delighted. I can move my client meetings." Because this, too, was an investment, only this time, the return she sought was a future with the man she loved. In the grand mirrors of Elsa Bassa, the exclusive bridal salon on Newbury Street, Emily seemed to float in a cloud of silk organza. Afternoon light set the beaded embroidery glimmering. "She looks like an angel," Patricia murmured, dabbing her eyes with a floating silk scarf. "It reminds me of Sarah's wedding. She was just as radiant." Kate lingered in the background, a quiet observer in her navy Chanel suit. She was the maid of honor, yet she felt the subtle distance. "Kate, could you take a photo?" Emily called out cheerfully. But before she could answer, Patricia interjected smoothly. "Oh, I'll do it. This will be for the family archives." The subtext hung, unmissable, in the air. Kate simply nodded, retrieving a business card from her bag. "This photographer handles our corporate events at the bank. His work is stunning. Should I book him for the wedding?" "Perfect," Emily said. Patricia's lips tightened. "But we have the photographer who has documented every Mitchell wedding for a generation." "Mother," Emily said, her reflection meeting Patricia's gaze in the mirror, "I want Kate's photographer." For a moment, Patricia's composure slipped. "Very well, do as you like." Then, a quiet, pointed aside to Kate. "Choices that break with tradition carry their own consequences." In the private dining room of the Bristol, crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over immaculate damask linens. The wedding planner, Jessica, held her clipboard aloft. "Now, the final seating chart for the rehearsal dinner. The main table will host the immediate family." "Wait," Emily interrupted. "Kate isn't listed here." Patricia offered a placid smile. A simple oversight, I'm sure. But it's too late to adjust now, isn't it? Not at all. Jessica began. I can easily. With a guest list of this caliber, Patricia cut in. Rearranging would inconvenience everyone. Kate rose, the soft click of her Chanel pumps echoing on the marble. It's fine, Patricia. I don't mind sitting elsewhere. But Robert spoke, his voice unusually firm. No, it is not fine. Kate is my wife. She belongs at the family table. The room chilled. Patricia stared at her son, her eyes colder than he had ever seen. Later, waiting alone on a velvet sofa, Kate overheard a conversation from a nearby table. Patricia says that investment banker simply caught Robert in a moment of weakness. She's so different from Sarah, who had such refinement. The nerve, with no family behind her. Kate's fingers stilled on her tablet, her spine turning to ice. Pardon the interruption. The voice belonged to James, Emily's fiancé, a respected cardiac surgeon. He turned to the women with a polite, cutting smile. But I was under the impression that such vulgar speculation was contrary to the very etiquette you claim to uphold. The women flushed and hurried away. James sat beside Kate. Don't let it trouble you. Aunt Patricia is a prisoner of her own world, but that is her burden, not yours. Kate thanked him with a smile, but her eyes betrayed a deep unease for the wedding to come. Through these scenes, an invisible tension coiled tighter, a quiet tectonic shift beneath the polished surface of Boston society. Everyone could feel it building toward a breaking point. The grand ballroom of the Four Seasons was awash in the light of historic chandeliers. Over 300 guests watched as Emily, breathtaking in her Vera Wang gown, exchanged vows that left not a single eye dry. As the new couple turned, greeted by thunderous applause, Kate moved gracefully through her duties as maid of honor, all too aware of Patricia's commanding presence as she held court with Boston's elite. A magnificent ceremony, a trustee of the Boston Symphony exclaimed, so beautifully in keeping with Mitchell tradition. Thank you, Patricia said, her voice brimming with pride. Our family has always. She was interrupted as waiters began to serve the main course. Silver domes were lifted in unison, releasing fragrant steam. Fine wine shimmered in crystal. But nothing was placed before Kate. At first, she assumed a simple error, but as service continued around her, her place remained conspicuously empty. A ripple of discomfort spread across the table. Excuse me, Kate said quietly to a passing waiter. I believe my meal is missing. The young man looked confused, exchanging an uncertain glance with the maitre d'. Then Patricia's voice, cold and clear, cut through the murmur of the ballroom. You should be grateful simply to be seated here. The words landed like a shard of ice. A stunned silence fell over the 300 guests. Emily looked horrified. James's brow furrowed in anger. Robert stared at his mother, his expression utterly transformed. Slowly, Kate folded the napkin from her lap and placed it on the table. Then she rose, her Chanel gown flowing around her, a queen reclaiming her throne. The gesture was one of pure, unassailable dignity, honed in boardrooms and on trading floors far from this gilded ballroom. Kate stood, her posture a silent testament to the woman she was, a woman who had built her own throne. Then this outsider will take her leave. The words were quiet, yet they carried through the stunned silence with the clarity of shattering crystal. They were not an outburst, but a declaration, the final, elegant severing of a tie. Patricia's face went ashen. The mask of the unassailable society queen fractured before 300 witnesses. Wait, please. The cry was stripped of all its practiced elegance. Patricia rose, her movement frantic, knocking over her wine glass. A dark crimson stain bloomed across the pristine linen, a violent portent of the unraveling to come. Robert was on his feet, his voice vibrating with a cold, unfamiliar fury. Mother, this is beyond forgiveness. Kate is my wife. And I am ashamed that it took me this long to stand up to your campaign of slights. Tears traced paths through Emily's makeup. Mother, how could you, on my wedding day? A wave of horrified murmurs swept the room. Boston's elite averted their eyes, the spectacle too raw, too real. Then, Jessica, the wedding planner, stepped forward, her voice trembling but clear. I can't be complicit any longer. Mrs. Mitchell gave me explicit instructions. The missing meal was not an oversight. The revelation landed like a second blow. The Mitchell name, a byword for old-world propriety, was being publicly dismantled. From the back of the room, a calm, authoritative voice cut through the chaos. "May I speak?" Margaret Williams, the associate priest of St. Paul's, moved to the center of the room. Her gaze on Patricia was not unkind, but it was unflinching. "Patricia, in confession, you spoke of Sarah, not with love, but with an obsession. You have built a shrine of your grief, and you tried to force everyone to worship at it. Sarah was perfect." Patricia's defense was a desperate, broken thing. "She was everything our family stands for. Sarah is gone, Mother." Robert's voice was heavy with a 7-year grief finally given voice. "And Kate is not her shadow. She is my light, the light you have tried to extinguish for 3 years." Emily wiped her tears, her own voice gaining strength. "Do you remember Kate's hospitalization? Her acute colitis? You called it unseemly. But do you know who held her hand through the night? Her middle-class parents, who showed more compassion than you ever have." The groom, James, stepped forward, his surgeon's eyes assessing the scene with clinical clarity. "As a doctor, I have seen many wounds. The ones inflicted today, in this room, will take the longest to heal." Patricia stood utterly alone. Her friends had subtly withdrawn, creating a visible chasm around her. The architecture of her life, the social standing, the unassailable reputation, was collapsing into dust around her pearl-clad shoulders. Her composure finally broke. I was wrong." The admission was a whisper, but in the silent ballroom, it was a thunderclap. She sank into her chair, a deflated figure, her perfectly coiffed hair now framing a face laid bare with shame. Robert turned to the assembled guests, his arm slipping protectively around Kate's waist. "Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize that you have witnessed this. Our family has shown you its deepest flaw, but from this ugliness, I hope we can build something true." Emily looked at her mother, her expression a mixture of heartbreak and resolve. "This wasn't the wedding I dreamed of, but perhaps it can be the new beginning our family needs." Winter settled over Beacon Hill, and the Mitchell mansion was quiet. The grand rooms, once filled with the murmur of parties, now held only silence. Patricia sat before the study's fireplace, a family album open on her lap. She turned past photographs of Sarah and Robert, of Emily's graduation, and then she stopped. It was a picture from Robert and Kate's wedding day. She had never truly looked at it before. Now, she saw it. The way her son gazed at his wife, the unguarded joy in Kate's smile. It was not a performance for society. It was pure, unadulterated happiness. A soft sob escaped her. "Why couldn't I see it?" she whispered to the empty room. The 6 months since the wedding had been a long, cold exile. Invitations had ceased. She had resigned from the charity boards. Even at St. Paul's, a polite, unbreachable distance surrounded her. The phone was silent. The Queen had been dethroned. Only Margaret, the priest, had remained, her weekly visits a lifeline. "We often cling so tightly to a memory that we break the living things in our hands," Margaret had said. With a trembling hand, Patricia picked up a pen and an expensive, heavy card. "To my beloved son, and to Kate." She paused, the weight of the pen immense. "I now see the depth of the hurt I have caused. I was guarding a ghost, and in doing so, I wounded the vibrant, wonderful family I had. I do not ask for your forgiveness. I only wish to say that I see your happiness now, and I sincerely rejoice in it." She wrote a similar card to Emily and James, acknowledging that she had stolen the joy from their day. The act of writing was an agony, but also a strange, profound release. On the mantel, a postcard from the newlyweds' honeymoon stood next to a photo of Robert and Kate in Paris. They had sent them a quiet offer of a bridge she had been too proud to cross. Nearby, unopened books on reconciliation and healing sat waiting. "I can change," she whispered into the quiet, the words a fragile promise to herself. "It is not too late." Outside, snow began to fall, gently blanketing the cobblestones and the brownstone steps, softening the edges of the world. The light from the mansion's window seemed warmer than it had in years. A new year was approaching, and with it, the quiet, daunting, and hopeful beginning of a new chapter.